If this is a police state idiot, then how come your voice is louder than ever? And Ilhan, this ain't your war-torn hometown. So please don't confuse a flawed system with a damn dictatorship. And don't you dare insult every American fighting for justice by labeling this democracy a regime. Recently, in a highly charged Capitol Hill hearing, Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar made waves with her impassioned remarks about what she described as the creeping establishment of a police state in America. Her words were meant to resonate with the frustrations of many communities across the country. But what followed next was nothing short of political theater at its sharpest. Representative Jasmine Crockett, known for her razor-sharp retorts and fearless defense of facts, took direct aim at Omar's claim. What began as a discussion on law enforcement and civil liberties turned into a fierce ideological showdown. The moment Crockett took the floor, she dismantled Omar's entire premise with a precision that left the room in stunned silence and social media in absolute chaos. In a clash that felt more like a courtroom cross-examination than a casual exchange of views, Crockett didn't just disagree with Omar, she obliterated the foundation of Omar's argument, sparking a national conversation on rhetoric, reality, and the power of perception. In a room that had already grown tense from repeated ideological sparring, Ilhan Omar stood to deliver a passionate condemnation of what she described as America's descent into a police state. She drew on personal history, painting a vivid picture of surveillance, militarized policing, and state-sponsored fear. She recalled her childhood in a war-torn Somalia, invoking memories of helicopters hovering overhead, soldiers on patrol, and the fear that seeped into daily life. As she spoke, her eyes burned with conviction, arguing that many marginalized communities in the United States today feel the same kind of pressure. Her voice quivered slightly as she spoke about immigration raids, mass incarceration, and militarized policing in communities of color. To her, these were not isolated incidents but markers of an encroaching authoritarianism. Her statements drew nods from a few colleagues but also triggered visible discomfort across the aisle, even among members of her own party who seemed caught off guard by the sweeping nature of her accusations. And then came Jasmine Crockett, calm, collected, and absolutely determined. She rose from her seat, straightened her papers, and asked for the floor. Her tone was respectful yet piercing, her words measured but fierce. She started by saying, respectfully, Ilhan, this ain't your hometown, and it sure as hell ain't a war zone. That one sentence sucked the air out of the room. It wasn't just a clapback, it was a refutation. Crockett made it clear that while systemic issues exist, painting the entire nation as a police state was not only misleading but dangerous. She pointed out that such hyperbole undermines legitimate critiques of law enforcement by diluting the gravity of real abuse with generalizations that don't hold under scrutiny. With laser focus, she dissected the comparison between the United States and actual regimes known for totalitarian control, where dissent is not just discouraged but criminalized, where political prisoners rot in cells without trial, and where the mere act of speaking truth to power is a death sentence. Crockett reminded everyone that the United States, despite its flaws, still provides legal protections and avenues for accountability that are non-existent in true police states. She cited examples of police officers being indicted, of protesters organizing freely, of media outlets critiquing the government without retaliation. You want to know what a police state looks like? Crockett asked, pausing as the room fell into a deeper silence. It's when you can't say what you just said without getting dragged off in a van and disappearing. You just described what you experienced in Somalia. That's a police state. But here, you're sitting in Congress, freely criticizing law enforcement on national television. That's democracy in action, even when it's uncomfortable. Her voice, though steady, carried a sting that demanded attention. She wasn't just debating, she was drawing a moral boundary between reckless fearmongering and the kind of rigorous, constructive critique that leads to reform. The crowd watching live, both in the gallery and online, erupted into reaction. Crockett wasn't dismissing real issues like police brutality or systemic racism. She was, however, demanding intellectual honesty. She acknowledged problems while refusing to let them be weaponized into a blanket condemnation that served more to alarm than to solve. Her tone grew more passionate as she shared her own experiences growing up in America's Black communities, witnessing injustice, fighting for reforms, and working to hold officers accountable. You don't get to erase our work by screaming, police state, every time you feel uncomfortable, she said. People have bled and marched and died for real reform. Don't insult them by pretending we're under the same boots as a dictator's army. This wasn't a political disagreement. This was a generational cry for accuracy, context, and respect for the sacrifice of those who built the civil rights framework brick by brick. She pivoted quickly to policy. Crockett laid out actual legislative battles she's been part of, those targeting qualified immunity, mandatory body cams, civilian oversight boards, and improved police training. She dared critics to read the bills, follow the votes, and understand that progress isn't made through exaggerated sound bites but hard, painful compromise and debate. It's easier to scare people than to lead them, she added, locking eyes with Omar, But some of us came here to do the work, not just go viral. The sting of that line was immediate and undeniable. The underlying accusation was clear. Jasmine was implying that some lawmakers were more interested in trending than in transforming policy, more interested in outrage than outcomes. And in that moment, the audience seemed to know exactly who she meant. As murmurs turned into buzz and phones began lighting up with notifications across social media, Jasmine continued. She recalled incidents where overblown rhetoric had real-world consequences, protests turning into riots, communities spiraling into distrust, and officers walking off jobs in protest of vilification. She asked the room bluntly, "Who benefits when we burn everything down with our words?" She wasn't defending the status quo, far from it. She was defending the process of real reform. We're not perfect, but we ain't hopeless, and we damn sure ain't a police state. If you don't believe in the work we're doing here, why are you here? Her frustration, though channeled eloquently, was palpable. She was not just challenging Omar. She was challenging every lawmaker who uses exaggerated language to incite fear rather than to enlighten the public or push practical solutions. The sting of her words did not go unnoticed. Ilhan Omar, to her credit, listened without interrupting, but her expression betrayed a mix of surprise and frustration. The ideological clash between two women from marginalized communities, both with lived experiences, both passionate, represented a rare kind of authenticity in American politics. This wasn't left versus right, this was reform versus revolution, realism versus alarmism, and Crockett was clearly winning this round. She had done what few dare to do, publicly call out one of her own in defense of principled truth-telling, and rather than being punished for it, she was rewarded with a rising wave of public approval. Social media lit up not just with the viral clip of her now infamous, "This ain't your hometown" line, but also with think pieces, commentaries, and support from across the political spectrum. Outside the chamber, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Pundits on the left were split. Some praised Omar for highlighting the long-ignored fears of immigrants and minorities, but many, including centrists and fellow progressives, applauded Crockett's candor. She trended on X within minutes. Clips of her "This ain't your hometown" line were reposted thousands of times. Hashtags like #CrockettFacts and #NotAPoliceState flooded feeds. Activists debated whether the truth could be told without minimizing people's pain, while journalists examined the growing internal tension within the Democratic Party. What emerged was a national reflection on what words we use to describe our democracy, and what happens when we go too far. In interviews afterward, Crockett didn't back down. She clarified that she respected Omar and her perspective but stood by her belief that hyperbole hurts more than it helps. "We can't build coalitions with fear," she said. "We need truth, we need strategy, and we need to stop scaring the people we claim to represent." Her words resonated with viewers tired of political theatrics and eager for concrete change. Across the country, Crockett was being hailed as a voice of clarity in a fog of hysteria. Even some conservatives praised her, not because they agreed with her politics, but because they respected her commitment to reasoned dialogue and policy-driven debate. More than just a viral moment, this confrontation became a defining instance of what intra-party debate can look like when rooted in purpose. Crockett didn't go after Omar to gain clout. She went after the narrative to defend the integrity of real activism. Her district includes communities ravaged by over-policing, but she refuses to trade their pain for political leverage. She knows that every sentence spoken in Congress ripples far beyond the chamber. That's why her words carry both fire and responsibility. She is, in essence, a new kind of political figure, one who refuses to let identity shield bad arguments, one who believes in telling hard truths even when it's unpopular, one who will defend the country's flaws without damning its foundations. And it wasn't just the public watching. Several lawmakers, including independents and moderates, reportedly approached Crockett afterward, thanking her for saying what many felt too afraid to articulate. They expressed frustration with the increasing dramatization of every issue, where nuance is lost and emotion overtakes reason. One lawmaker was overheard saying, "Finally, someone had the guts to tell the truth, even behind closed doors." Crockett's influence was rising. She had proven that it's possible to challenge ideas without resorting to personal attacks, and that principle-based disagreement is not only healthy, it is essential in a functioning democracy. As the news cycle churned, both women doubled down. Omar released a statement reaffirming her position, emphasizing the real fear felt by many communities under surveillance. But even some of her longtime supporters conceded that her language may have gone too far. Meanwhile, Crockett held town halls and media appearances to further break down her position. In every venue, her message remained consistent: fight injustice with facts, reform with resolve, don't cry wolf when the people need a shepherd. Her insistence on intellectual honesty became a standard by which future political arguments were judged. She turned a moment of conflict into a milestone for maturity in political discourse. The legacy of this clash will likely live on far beyond the initial video clip. In a political era where too many seek virality over victory, Jasmine Crockett reminded everyone that clarity, courage, and accountability still matter. She proved that it's possible to be passionate without being reckless, to criticize without catastrophizing, and most of all, she proved that defending the truth is sometimes more radical than any slogan. So when she looked across the table at Omar and said, "This ain't your hometown," it wasn't a jab, it was a wake-up call. A call to ground the conversation in reality. A plea to preserve the credibility of their shared cause. And the crowd, stunned and silent, heard every word. It was not just a moment. It was a message, one that cut across party lines, social divides, and digital screens with equal force. And while debates will rage and tempers will flare in future hearings, one thing is now crystal clear: if anyone thought Jasmine Crockett would stay quiet in the face of exaggerated narratives, they were sorely mistaken. In the halls of power, truth still has a voice, and its name is Jasmine Crockett. If this moment inspired you as much as it shook Washington, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more fearless breakdowns, and share this video with someone who values truth over theatrics.